Okay, I'm Joseph Newman. Y'all know who I am by the videos I have up on Google. This is just a follow-up to what I've already been telling y'all, but it's very, very pertinent. I've been telling all the business people that are friends, close friends to me, if they have any stock, they should sell it. Now, this is something that I started on long before I ever started on this energy invention. Now, I'm going to crank up this energy invention so that it'll bring you up to date with what I'm showing you. Now, that starts off slow, and as y'all remember, that's moving a positive displacement pump that weighs 375 pounds. The manufacturer said it takes a 10 horsepower motor to run it. This rotary, as you remember, weighs 1,650 pounds. The whole machine weighs 7,500 pounds. I told you, it used to produce lightning. My enemies who bought my book have made the statement, I'd never be able to make this practical because it produced lightning. And they said you'd never be able to master it. Well, you see, I have mastered it, as I've already shown y'all, because there is no lightning produced from it. You don't see no big spark. The machine is running that pump, and it'll be pumping water. And even right now, you can see what this voltage is. We only got, if you can shoot this meter right here, this is anywhere from 11 to 12 volts going in. We got 120 volts coming in here, but we're only using 12 volts of this, and it'll anywhere from 11 to 12 volts. And you'll see what this current is. This is showing the current. If you can pull up on that, that's a point. 0, 1, and 2, and 3, and 4. Up to 5, you'll see as the speed gets up, this will go back down as that speed gets faster and faster. That's a known fact of a conventional motor. It draws the most current when it's taken off. It draws less current once it's running. Now, this point oh something that you see here is varying anywhere from 2 to 6 to 7. It's clearly showing you if you multiply any kind of thing like a point oh something times 11 volts or something, you have less than a half of a watt running this whole machine. I can spit a half of a watt. So can you. A half of a watt isn't nothing. A little night light draws 7 watts of power. I've told y'all that this machine will change the world. 40 scientists, nuclear physicists, electrical engineers, mechanical engineers are up on the internet and Google telling you. Dr. Swimmer, top mathematician at Arizona State University, made the statement, this machine was correct by more than 1 trillion to 1. I've given a unified mechanical field theory. I've mechanically explained gravity, electricity, magnetism, wave particle theory of light, the property of inertia. Tesla made the statement, whoever could mechanically explain electricity make the greatest discovery in the history of man. I got news for y'all. I did that way back in 1968, and the world didn't do nothing. Now's the time for the world to get behind this, because the world is fixing to collapse economically. When I wrote this book, I put everything that I believed for the human race in it. And many people told me, Joe, you shouldn't put all that you believe. I talked about religion. I talked about economics. I talked about the teaching system. All these other subjects in this book only talk about the energy machine, because if they didn't like anything you said, they'd try to discredit all of it. I said, that doesn't bother me for a simple reason. I'm not promoting Joseph Newman. I'm promoting the people of the earth. Now, this is something that I saw, as I've told y'all before, up on the internet. I quit believing in God when I was in Puerto Rico. I saw such a disparity between wealth and poverty when I was a young man. Now, you think about what I said. I totally quit believing in God. I saw 300 people get wiped off the end of an island. They had it on the news one time like it was 300 pigs. And it upset me so much, I stood on a mountain like I told y'all with my fist in the air at God. How could he not be angry about what he saw here? And I made a vow standing on that mountain. If I was the only entity in the universe that did good for humanity, I was going to spend my life to do it. This technology is that, but what I'm fixing to show y'all right now is that also. I want you to look at this graph that I saw as a young man when I started taking economics. And I thought I was going to be impressed when I went to college. I'd quit believing in God, and I went to college thinking, well, I'm going to talk with intelligent people. When I put these graphs together, they were through an economics book. I put them all on one page in this book. What came to my mind was stupid, because I couldn't believe I lived in a world of such stupidity. It would graph its mistakes and repeat it every 5 to 15 years like clockwork. This is the Great Depression that I was born in. It was great misery in 1929. I was born in 1936, and it was still hard, a Great Depression. I saw what that is. Most of you people don't have any idea what it is. Well, I got news for you. You're fixing to get one worse than this. And the most intelligent people of the world are quoting that this is fixing to happen. And what's it tied to? The cost of oil. This machine will eliminate that. Now, the world better wake up. I want to read some quotes to you, just of a few people who are making statements about what we've got to do. Alan Greenspan, who used to be head of the Federal Reserve, made this quote: "People in the country do not realize all of our energy is tied to international energy, are both we need to find alternatives because we're not going to be able to maintain this." This is a quote from interview on ABC, Charlie Rose, 9/20/07, PBS program, April the 10th, 1907. "We have gone through one half of the world's stored energy uses in the last 4.5 billion years in approximately 130 years. Jeffrey Emmett, GEO of General Electric Incorporated, had this quote: "In the entire decade of the 90s, the average price of oil was $15 per barrel." That's from an interview on PBS, Charlie Rose, 11/8/07. "We need an inspirational energy policy," was his quote. There it is in front of you. And the world hasn't done anything. Now, this man right here, Matthew Simmons, was on the History Channel on the 28th of January, 2008, making the statement. Now, this guy, Matthew Simmons, has a company, a $50 to $65 billion a year company, and he's tied in with oil. He's on a lot of boards, international boards, for the international control of the world. And this is his quote: "If we don't come up with a plan B immediately for a new energy source, within 5 to 7 years, the world is going to have a major war over oil, and we're going to have a tremendous economic collapse." Now, already, I'm sure that most of the people out there, if they're not, they should be noticing that what's been said on the stock market. They're scared to death. They don't know what's going to occur. They do know that the bottom is falling out on the stock market. There's plenty of signs. The number of ships in the last year coming into America is greatly reduced. That means the United States is pulling in less stuff. Most of our products we buy today are made from China. If we have an economic collapse here, it's going to affect the whole world, because we don't hardly make anything anymore in the United States. It's made all everywhere else. But we consume a tremendous out of proportion amount of materials worldwide. We pull it in and eat it like greedy little pigs. And we have a debt that is now upon us that we placed on our children that the world, it seems to be blind to. Now, these other people are telling you something terrible is fixing to happen. Now, they're in the oil business. Just recently, Exxon, in the last 2 weeks, made the statement. They had the biggest profit they have ever made. $40 to $50 billion they made profit this past year. That's kind of like back in ancient times, as Rome burned and the king was playing the fiddle. They make a phenomenal amount of money off the backs of every other manufacturer in the world, because everything from fertilizer to steel, you know what it's tied to? It ain't tied to labor. It's tied to the cost of energy. Now, this has been documented way back in the 60s. I read this a long time ago when I was a young man, reading all the stuff I read. But it stuck in my mind. I knew that what I was working on would be a safeguard against that happening, because you can run the whole world on this technology, and every human being better wake up and get behind it, because you're going to have an economic collapse, because there is no solution to the present economic quandary that everybody's in except you come up with a replacement of oil. Just like Simmons made the statement, if we don't come up with a plan B immediately so you can get it into the works, because it'll take over years for you to work it into that whole system. Even if you started producing it night and day, it still take you years to go through the whole status quo system of the world that uses oil. It's not going to replace it all immediately. And he knows that. That's why it says, and he made the statement on that show, was that everything is going down a tube at a higher and higher rate, and it's all tied to the cost of energy. Now look again at what you're seeing right here. This is still 11 to 12 volts, and this is still 0.0 something. Occasionally it goes to 0.1. This thing samples so many times a second. That's why that needle changes all the time. It's sampling it, I think, about 7 or 8 times a second on this particular meter. And that's why it changes all the time and shows you what's going on. But if you multiply that time what you see there, let's even if you took, say it was 0.1, and you multiply it times 11, that's one watt of power. 1 watt. And again, you can spit a watt. A watt ain't no power at all. And it's running a 7,500 pound machine with a 1,650 pound rotary and pumping water at the same time. Now that's what I want y'all people to understand. This graft that I saw as a young man, let you know how much this meant to me as a young man. I wrote to John Kennedy in 1961 when I was taking economics in Mobile, Alabama, under a teacher, Mr. Robert Cooper, who was a great teacher because he allowed me to teach economics when I was a young man. I just came back and I looked at these graphs, and I read fast. When I was in 2nd grade, I made 11th grade reading comprehension at Old Shell School in Mobile, Alabama. I looked at these graphs, and what dawned on me is stupid. The word stupid. Because I knew I could take that graph to any production line in the world and say, hey, look at this graph. It's going to work a week and break down a week. It's going to work a week and break down a week. They tell me to get the hell out of there. And they don't realize that this graph always runs, every production line of the Western world runs off of that graph. And right now, companies are shutting down, laying people off. Unemployment is getting greater and greater. People losing their homes. Over 100,000 people have lost their homes in the last year and a half or so. And that's just the starting of it. We are in a depression. Now back, it used to be the gold standard backed up everything that we did. We don't have a gold standard anymore. It's all paper. It's all blown up. Now once it starts falling, it plummets straight down. Everybody gets scared and they quit buying. It's almost like there's a God that does this and makes everybody come to the same opinion at the same time. Everything's too high. It's getting out of perspective. And they all quit buying. Manufacturers quit producing. They lay off their workers. I wrote to Kennedy, John Kennedy, as a young man, about what I believed when I was taking economics, because I had got up in my class and I sat on the back row going to night school, and everybody else sat up on the first 2 or 3 rows, and got up and told him, I said, I won't accept what you're teaching. It's a lie. It's not based on the supply and demand. It's based off of fear and greed, and these graphs show it. And he didn't miss a beat. He said, Joe, get up and teach the class. First I thought he's being smart, and I said, okay, and I will. Got up and started teaching. I got everybody in that class aroused, but what shocked me the most was I looked in the back of the room at Mr. Cooper, and he was smiling at me. I knew he would have got fired if he was to say the things I was saying, because the power brokers of the world would have seen to it that he was fired. But he could allow me, a student, to say it. And whenever the class would get bored, he would say, Joe, you want to get up and teach the class? And I always would. And I'd get everybody in there stirred up. And at the end of the year, he called me over and said, Joe, he said, I want to thank you. And I said, what for, Mr. Cooper? He said, Joe, economics is the most important class a student can take. He said, I don't care if they're going to be a doctor. I don't care if they're going to be a lawyer. I don't care if they're going to be a nurse. I don't care what they're going to be. Economics controls their whole life, and they never seem to get an awareness of that even when they go through this class. They just want to memorize it, get a grade, and get out. He said, you've got more participation out of my classes than all the classes I've ever taught. And he said, I'm an old man. And he said, I simply wanted to thank you. I said, Mr. Cooper, it's been a great pleasure to be in your class. I said, I hope to pay tribute to you one day, and I do in this very book on economics, that every teacher should aspire to be the kind of teacher Mr. Cooper was. But when I wrote to President Kennedy, his special assistant, Arrington, wrote back to me and said that John Kennedy wanted me to personally see his proposal that he had just written up to Congress, titled, How to Add Momentum Back to the American Economy, and sent that to me, and I carried it to Mr. Cooper. He made copies of it and gave it to everybody in the economics classes. It's no accident I have told my friends who've known me a long time, business people who've backed me for years on this technology, to sell all the stock they got and buy gold. Gold's up to $1,000 an ounce. You know why it is? Because that's one thing that always has value. Even during the Great Depression, money becomes worthless. Banks go out of business. Several big banks were on the verge of bankruptcy just because of the housing industry recently. In fact, they had to get to all people to get them out. You, the people, better wake up. Now, all these people running for president right now, they all know about this technology. None of them give a crap about it. I've done something that nobody in the history of the world has ever done. This machine would run 10 houses, and you wouldn't pay spit for it. It's more like 200 to 1 now, the way I'm doing this, more out than in. And you'd rather pay $200 a month or $1 a month. To me, that's a no-brainer. I started on talking about economics before I ever started on this energy machine. I had made a vow standing on the mountain in Puerto Rico. And when I saw that graph that gives people hope and slaps them down with misery, gives them hope and slaps them down with misery, gives them hope and slaps them down with misery, one word came into my mind: stupid. I couldn't believe I lived in a world of such stupidity, with gratuitous mistakes repeated year after year. My thought was even then, hell, I don't belong in this country or this world, because these people are stupid. And the business people out there, it's not just the low-down people. The business people are stupid because of the fact they run off of fear and greed. That's two things that God despises. Now, that fear and greed runs that economic graph. Anybody is a liar who says it runs off supply and demand, because these graphs prove they're a liar. For over 200 years, it proves it. Now, you're going to see, and I'm telling you, this is going to happen, a great economic collapse. The only thing that will save it is you make oil obsolete as an energy source. And this guy Simmons says the same thing. And he's got a $50 to $60 billion company, and he's tied into all the power brokers of the world. This machine will run the whole world and do away with the cost of oil and pollution. I've had $10 million worth of publicity about what this would do for the world. I was on Johnny Carson, got the biggest response from anybody who's not ever been on his show. Written up in Life magazine as David against Goliath. Now's the time for you people, if you don't want a Great Depression, for you business people, what's going to have to happen? Right now on the Gulf Coast, we pass laws when there's a hurricane that people can't raise the price of oil or food. They will be severely penalized if they do so. Now you'll notice that just recently the Federal Reserve has been dropping interest rates. Now what happens immediately? People start raising their prices as a result of it. Big companies raising their prices. Now that's building an inflation greater and greater, which is making people more fearful. They're going to quit buying, and this is the way it happens. And then finally everybody quits buying because people are working off of fear and greed. We should pass laws just like we pass it when there's a hurricane. This is an economic emergency right now. And if anybody who watches Channel 43 and sees people talking who are well versed in economics about their fears, they don't have any idea what's going to happen. They're all postulating about negative signs, but we're still scared, and they're hopeful that somehow it's going to be a miracle occur, but it's not. Why do you think Exxon made $50 billion last year, the greatest profit that they ever made? For a simple reason. Hell, oil is over $100 a barrel. It hangs around that all the time. And they're talking about it's going to 150 to 200 to 300 eventually. That's what this guy is talking about without using the numbers. You people have been given a machine for a mere servant that God has given me. This technology is the ark all over again. I told y'all what the ark was, a static electromagnetic generator. Whenever you look at what God told Aaron, he is to have that robe made of a certain material, had gold in it, which is a very good conductor. You'll have bells that will drag the floor so that you die not. And then when David was trying to move it, and the priest was walking with it that didn't have a robe on, like God had told Aaron to wear, and the mule shook, and when he did, the priest put his hand on it to try to stabilize it, and it killed him. Well, this bothered David because he was a good person, and he asked God, why did you kill him? Well, God didn't tell him. Now, God has given me this technology that is a new ark for the whole world. This is something that God has given, and every person in there should be out here behind this right now. I've given my life. I've turned down a phenomenal amount of money. But what I'm worried about now, again, is you, the people. I'm not worried about Joseph Newman. I know that I start producing this technology, this value of this company is going to go skyrocket. You know why? The same reason that oil is making such a high profit right now. But I won't rape the people. They are raping you. GE guy was telling you in the 90s it wasn't but $15 a barrel. That hasn't even been 20 years yet. And it's jumped to $100 a barrel. You know what that is? That's greed. Now the people ought to be mad, you ought to be mad as hell about that. But you don't. You don't say nothing. You squawk a little bit to your friends. You need to form a parade, march on Washington. It's an old saying, you form a parade and a politician will get in front of it. But you got to form that parade. You got a solution right here. You got one of the power brokers telling you, if you don't have a plan B within 5 or 7 years, the world is done. That's his comments, not mine, his. That's why I'm making this tape right now. Jim, did you have anything you wanted to say?
I've been privileged enough to work with Joe for the last 2 months. I've had 25 years in air conditioning heating as an air conditioning heating contractor in Texas. I know electric meters, machinery. This machine is producing its own energy. It's running on a watt of current, a watt. And it doesn't even need that. Joe has gotten to a point where it'll be incorporated into the machine. It'll be totally self-sufficient. You can put it out in the North 40 and power your house without any electric company lines running to your house. This machine will drop in your car when it's scaled down. It'll run your car. If you're a trucker and you're driving a semi, this machine can be taken the place of that Cummins diesel, and you won't even need a transmission. It's got infinite torque. It's got infinite power. It's got RPMs that will exceed jet engines, given bearing and metallurgy technology, taking that into consideration. This is the next industrial revolution. I've seen it up close. I'm very privileged to work with Joe. He has discovered something that I'll put it in terms of a man that said it in 1987. His name was Milton Everett. He was a mechanical engineer for the Mississippi Department of Energy. And he said, this is the greatest discovery in the history of mankind. And I verify that. It is. This monster is running on 1 watt. 1 watt. That's, like Joseph said, you can't run a nightlight on 1 watt of power. Pumping water. 30,000 gallons a day this will pump. On 1 watt of power? What's the matter with us? Why don't we get behind this man? He's a genius. He's an intuitive genius, equal to Galileo, equal to Leonardo da Vinci. Why don't we get behind it?
Y'all should listen. Now, y'all can call Joe Noffi. He's the guy hired as president, and he'll tell you how you can become and get in behind this machine. Area code 205-835-9022. And keep in mind what I'm telling you about economics. I wouldn't tell all the business people that I knew to be selling any stock that they have in the stock market and buy gold. It's up to $1,000 an ounce. I remember back in the 80s, it was around, $150 an ounce or something. It wasn't anything. Gold always goes up because it's one thing that man wants, is because there's a limited amount of it. That's why gold, when everything else, when the money becomes worthless, gold has a value. The whole country can fall. You can still take that gold and go anywhere in the world and trade for commodities with it. That's well documented throughout history when nations collapse. It's gold that really has the value. It has a value that even diamonds don't, because there's a lot more diamonds available than it is gold. Gold has a phenomenal value. That's what I know this technology is to the world. It's gold. And again, call Joe Noffi, area code 205-835-9022. But you, the people, have to wake up the tiger within yourself to get this technology. Because there's been people just like Simpson. We sent him a video, Jim did, of this. We hadn't heard a word from him. You know why? Because he's still tied in with power brokers, and I won't give them a control of it. They've offered to buy me out, offered me an open-ended check, threatened my life, told them to go to hell, turned down the money. They know they can't deal with me. And the reason I won't sell them is simple. They'll never sell you this machine. If they get control of it, they'll lease it to you, and then every year they'll have a reason to raise the price of this lease, of this machine that I've given my life for humanity, of a vow I made standing on a mountain in Puerto Rico. They would raise that price of that lease. Not no, hell no. They'll never get it. God is going to make you, the people, wake up and get behind this. Thank y'all for watching this tape.